Pastor Robert Morris of Gateway Church has admitted to sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl for several years, according to the Christian Post. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Today you get to say, I told you so. Today, I don't want to.
Now, to all the people who have defended Robert Morris in my comment section, I am not here to tell you that I told you so. That is not the point of this video.
I never said that. You may have heard it, I may have thought it, and it may be true, but I never said it.
No, the point of this video is to go over some of the facts as reported by the Christian Post and to have, hopefully, a helpful conversation about just why sexual assault amongst minors is so prevalent in the church and why our culture in particular seems to create vulnerabilities that predators take advantage of. And maybe we can change some of our understanding and some of our approach to this, and maybe we can have better outcomes as a result.
What I did bloody tell you.
Hello all, I'm the Mad Pastor, and Christianity sucks. It's boring, it's irrelevant, it's out of date, but it doesn't have to be. Let me explain why. So let's start by taking a look at the article. This is from the Christian Post. The headline, Pastor Robert Morris confesses to moral failure. That's putting it lightly. After woman claims he began molesting her at the age of 12. Let's start with what Robert Morris released a statement to the Christian Post. Let's start where he starts. When I was in my early 20s, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady. We'll get to that in a minute because the survivor of the assault takes umbrage with that language, young lady. She was a child. She was a 12-year-old little girl. Sexual behavior with a young lady in a home where I was staying. It was kissing and petting and not intercourse. She disputes that fact, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. So Morris then goes on to say, in March of 1987, this situation was brought to light and it was confessed and repented of. I think it's interesting that the language is, it was confessed. It's like third-party objectification. He's not saying, I confessed to my crime and I repented. He's saying it was confessed. That it's a distancing tactic. So it was confessed and repented of. I submitted myself to the elders of Shady Grove Church and the young lady, again, the child's father. They asked me to step out of ministry and receive counseling in Freedom Ministry. I don't know what Freedom Ministry is. I assume that's some kind of rehabilitation, which I did. Since that time, I have walked in purity and accountability in this area. So let's just start by acknowledging this is far from an apology. He's not quite taking responsibility for it. He's saying, this is behind me, I'm over it. Obviously, that's not true for the survivor, otherwise she wouldn't be coming forward. Also, there are details in that account that she denies, that she says are not true at all. And then also the language, the subtle use of language. She was not a young lady, she was a child, a 12-year-old girl, and he was in his 20s, and he was sexually assaulting her. According to Morris, I asked their forgiveness and they graciously forgave me. According to Morris, he actually met with the father and the family and the church and they forgave him. Again, that is not the story according to the actual survivor and the person who has come forward. So she says, I am of course, just appalled at young lady. I was 12 years old. I was a little girl, a very innocent little girl, and he was brought into our home, he and his wife, Debbie, and their little boy, Josh, and trusted and preached at the church that my dad helped start, and then began grooming all of us to do this. That's an interesting little detail. Multiple attempts, apparently, according to her, grooming all of us to do this, which took me decades to wrap my brain around as an adult. She goes on to say, it went on for many years. He says there was no sexual intercourse, but he did. I must say this is about to get a little graphic, so if you don't want to hear that, please skip ahead or, go find another thing to watch on YouTube. But fair warning. It went on for many years. He says there was no sexual intercourse, but he did touch every part of my body and inserted his fingers into me, which I understand now is considered a form of, YouTube doesn't like the R word, by instrumentation. So I say sexual assault, even though the R word is perfectly appropriate. But I got to work with the stupid algorithm. I was an innocent 12-year-old little girl who knew nothing about sexual behavior. Cindy, the survivor of the assault, spoke with the Wartburg Watch about the details of what originally happened back in 1982, the first time that the assault took place. The Morris family came to visit and spend some time there. Cindy sat in the back seat of the car with Robert. He asked her to visit him in his room that night. She shared a room with her sister. Cindy, an innocent 12-year-old girl, movingly described what she was wearing. She was wearing pink pajamas with bloomer pants. She wore underwear underneath. She had a snap-up robe on. This was her original account back in 1982. And the details, the reason I lift them up is because they put a human picture on what's exactly going on. This isn't boys will be boys, locker room, whatever that bullshit is. No, this is an adult man who's married and has a child who is grooming and sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. And it happened in the church, under the watchful eyes of the church elders and leaders, and he got away with it. He was never charged. He was never arrested. He never went to court. He never went to jail. He got away with it according to his own words submitted to the Christian Post. Once again, I just want to reemphasize, I'm going to read details about the account according to the survivor from the Wartburg Watch. So, trigger warning. She thought nothing of visiting a family friend in their bedroom. He told her to lie down on her back and touched her stomach. He told her to close her eyes. Then he touched her breasts and felt under her panties. He warned her, never tell anyone about this because it will ruin everything. That's according to the Wartburg Watch, and those are the words of the survivor. There was a civil action attempted lawsuit. However, that came with the stipulation that the survivor would sign a non-disclosure agreement, which she did not agree to. And finally, I think this is important. According to the survivor, my father never, ever gave his blessing on Robert returning to ministry. My father told him he's lucky he didn't kill him. I am mortified that he is telling the world my dad gave his blessing. Of course we forgave because we are called to biblically forgive those who sin against us, but that does not mean he is supposed to go on without repercussions. And I think that's an important factor in here. As we transition to talk about church culture and why this seems to happen so predominantly in church culture, first of all, let me say, I come at this honestly. I grew up in a church where one of the staff members was sexually assaulting several of the children at the church, and he, thankfully, was dealt with accordingly. As soon as allegations came to light, our church leaders contacted the authorities. He was arrested, he was tried, he was convicted, he served prison time. Unfortunately, I have heard since then that he has gotten employment at other churches also working with youth and children. Despite my own personal attempts to warn those congregations about his history, they seem to know it and be okay with it. That's the first problem. When we talk about grace and when we talk about forgiveness, it doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to the potential harm that people can cause towards vulnerable populations. And the church conflates those two ideas. The church far too often conflates forgiveness with not serving consequences to the appropriate party. When a person commits a sexual assault against a child, then that person needs to be handled and dealt with as though that is a potential for the rest of their life. It needs to be, I'm not saying that you take their life away. I'm not saying that forgiveness and grace is not possible, but consequences need to have teeth to them. They need to actually impact the person's life, and they need to take seriously the potential harm to future victims. So that's one. Two, why don't we take these seriously and call the police? How come so many churches take this stance of we can handle this internally? We don't trust the authorities. You must get the law involved. Anytime a crime is being committed within the congregation, you must get the law involved. There's a reason we have law enforcement. There's a reason we have a justice system. There's a reason that we try to eliminate bias and have fair juries and fair criminal practices. There's a reason for that. It's because the people who are this close to something should not be the ones who are deciding the ultimate outcome. Again and again and again, we see this, where somebody has been caught red-handed committing horrific crimes, abuse against children, sexual abuse against children, and they do not ever face any legal consequences. And Robert Morris is now one of them, according to his own words, reported to the Christian Post. The third thing is hero worship. Why do we put pastors on a pedestal so high that when they blatantly, horrifically, absolutely devastate someone's life, with their authority, with their power, with their privileged position, when they devastate someone's life for the rest of their life, we just, boys will be boys, and what was she wearing at the time, and all kinds of those kinds of questions, those kinds of statements. I remember there was a meeting in my home church after a person, the person was the choir director, and when he was arrested and tried, one of the counter arguments was, but the orchestra and the choir sound so beautiful. Essentially saying, isn't it okay to sacrifice some of our children on the altar of his sexual perversion and crime so that we can have pretty music? This type of hero worship and this type of he would never do something, and even if he did, look at all the good he's done, is unacceptable. And it seems to be running its way through most of our congregations on some level. We must repent of this sin. We must not hero worship. The pastor up on stage is a human being, and when they commit a crime, they need to be held to account. And the fourth one that I want to talk about is, it's a little more abstract, but it is the depersonalization of our faith. The reason that we can have such just glaring contradictions in who we are called to be, what we claim to believe about God and about what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to be a disciple, certainly child sexual assault does not fit in that paradigm. And yet, because we outsource our faith, we let other people do the thinking for us. We do not engage personally in our own discipleship, but instead we make it the responsibility of others. If I go to church on Sunday morning and I take communion and I sit through the boring sermon and I sing the songs in the book, then that means I'm a Christian. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Take some personal responsibility for your own faith, for your own discipleship, engage in a moral and ethical way, and when something does not add up, wrestle with it. Be in the muddiness. Be in the messiness. Trust that God is working with you and on you. We call it sanctification in the Methodist Church. Once you're baptized and a believer and you claim the name Jesus, you're not done. God is still working on you, and you need to be in that work. You need to let it be messy and let it be contradictory, and you need to arrive at something that makes sense as best as you can make sense of it and trust God in the areas that don't. And when somebody is objectively harming someone else, you have a responsibility as a follower of Jesus to step up and do the right thing. This church has not. Robert Morris has not. He's using language and PR to try and minimize the absolute harm that he's done to this person. You cannot be an adult in a sexual relationship with a child without harming them. And he has, and he got away with it. So, I've been the Mad Pastor, and Robert Morris is not a good disciple, and he is not following Jesus. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.